This podcast is brought to you by New Life Ministries.
Welcome to the Every Man's Battle podcast. I'm your host, JJ West. On this podcast, you will hear honest conversation and encouragement for living a life of sexual integrity. Let's get to today's episode. Well, hey, welcome back to the Every Man's Battle podcast. We're so glad you're with us today. We are going to continue our conversation from last week's episode on full disclosure. We did part one. Doug and I did part one last week. And this week, as you can see in studio, we have Laura Mangin-McDonald joining us. Yay! Laura is a longtime friend of the podcast, joined us for some episodes last season. In fact, some of you may or may not be aware, Laura joined us for several episodes last season, but we are calling those the lost episodes.
Yes. We're still mourning.
Yes. Probably four different episodes that we recorded that that are lost in the ether somewhere.
Floating.
But we have you back, and we're so glad that you're with us. We're so glad to get your wisdom and insight. And again, for those of you who don't know, Laura is a licensed professional counselor in Texas. She's also the speaker at Restore and at Intimacy and Marriage for New Life Ministries, and has joined the cast of the co-hosts for New Life Live on several occasions as well. So if any of you have been to any of those or seen those, you are familiar with Laura, and she's joining us today because she's going to help us fill in the gaps, fix the mistakes, correct the errors from Doug and I from last week. And for those of you who don't know as well, Laura not only is coming at this as a professional, as a licensed professional counselor who has worked with many couples doing full disclosure, but she's also walked through that process herself in her own relationship. We dove into some of that in the episodes in season one, but she's going to share from both those perspectives, both from the walking through it yourself and from the clinical professional perspective as well. So we're so glad you're with us, Laura.
We're excited. Oh gosh, guys, I've been counting down the days to be with y'all. We had so much fun, robust exchange in our lost episodes. So I'm sure we'll be able to do that again today. But thank you for having me. Yeah. What an honor. Yeah. Thank you.
So this is a continuation of our conversation from part one. Yeah, thank you for that.
And seriously, it was really good.
Good, thank you. So just to recap, in part one, we started talking about full disclosure. We talked about some of the key components of full disclosure, what should be included. We talked about humility. We talked about it being in writing. We talked about the process of doing the full disclosure and then the impact statement and the amends letter. We talked about trying to provide care for the spouse for afterwards, like what does that look like?
Right.
We even tackled the question of whether or not it makes sense to do a polygraph. But, Laura, since we have you here, we want to rely on your expertise. What would you include? What did we leave off the list that you think are some key components to include?
Gosh, guys, I don't think y'all actually left off anything. I really mean it when it was great. What I would add, as far as maybe going deeper into the explanation that you didn't have an opportunity to do in that, something that came up to me is, the disclosure is an opportunity to heal. It opens the door for healing, right? Yeah. However, here's the hard part. It has two forks, two sides. Okay. Right? So you have a guy who is excited. Well, first of all, you have a female who's the woman, girlfriend, wife, who's so thankful that he wants to be honest because I need to know what's happened in my life, right?
Right. What's my story?
What's my story, right? So she's grateful for that, but it's not, and this is hard to say, but it's not like a win.
No.
It's not like a win, right?
Right.
It's like, okay, so even as I say this, I'm pausing and I feel my body tensing for where I've been, for, walking other women through this, other couples through this. So I want to come out of the gate and say, look, who wants, in fact, I say, when I speak at Restore, I go, I never wanted this to be my story.
Yeah.
I go, I'm sorry, you're here.
Yeah.
I never wanted to sign up for this. But Genesis 50:20 reigns, right? That the Lord will not waste pain.
That's right.
And he doesn't. So anyway, the disclosure, going a little bit deeper on that I would add is the guy, oftentimes, what I've seen in my office is he's excited he's like, okay, I'm freedom. I'm confessing. This is, and she's just going, you want me to be happy for you?
Right,
okay. But then he backs up the big dump truck. And all of a sudden, the last 25 years of her life, and of course, that's when the words can begin to fly.
Right.
Use your imagination.
Right.
And and he's like, this is what you wanted?
Right.
Yeah.
This is what
Right.
and looking at me like,
Right.
what,
You told me to do this.
I'm doing
Right. Yeah.
this is what. So I mean, that's why don't do it alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need not just a therapist, but a trauma therapist, a trauma trained therapist who can translate betrayal language.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the nervous system language, right?
Yeah.
But y'all did a great job.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. And I agree with you. There needs to be that you need to work with someone who has experience doing this. This is not easy.
It's not for the
work.
faint-hearted.
It's not for the faint of heart. No, absolutely not. It is important work, like you said, for the spouse, for the girlfriend, the fiance. It is important for her to feel like, okay, I'm getting the truth. So she is grateful that she's going to learn the real story of her life.
Right.
But it's a painful story.
It's painful.
Yeah.
And to have a trauma therapist there to translate her responses. Unfortunately, some group of people that I get, and I'm sure you all have experienced the same, by the time they get to my office, they've already been through a couple of different avenues for help. And well-meaning people have tried to help, maybe the clergy, some friends, life group, all well-meaning people.
Right.
But they don't understand the nervous system, right? So what happens is then she is identified as being hard-hearted, unforgiving.
Sure. Yeah.
And, it's going, look, you said you forgive me. Why are you still bringing this up? Of course, we can get into that more with, the grief related. But, so then by the time we get to the disclosure, there's been, the wounds have become kind of septic. And maybe they've been doing this for 9 or 8 months. And he, even though has a desire and has shown up to repent, he hasn't done the work in his heart. Because I will tell every couple that sit down and go, until you understand exactly how you got here, you'll end up here again. You must know how you got here.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it points to, we did another episode on good recovery work, measuring good recovery work.
Yes.
And, that difference between the tangible and the intangible,
Yes.
one of the key components of the intangible, right, is I'm working on my character, I'm working on my heart.
Yes.
And so when I'm doing that, it helps me to enter into that discussion, that full disclosure, very differently. It allows me to enter in with that humble posture. It allows me to enter in and engage in full disclosure with the heart of, I want to care for you.
Yes.
I want you to know the truth about your life.
Yes.
I want you to be able to know all this about me in order for us to be closer, right? Those are all character traits that are being challenged because my flesh goes, no, I don't want any of that.
Right, I'm scared.
There's tremendous anxiety, both for the one who's doing the disclosure and for the one who is being disclosed to.
Right.
And so my character helps me, when I'm working on my character, it helps me to go, I'm going to be other-centered, not self-centered.
And
I'm not
even
going to just
though
focus
that's
on
a
my
desire,
anxiety.
even though that's the desire to be other-centered, how can I be somewhere I don't know how to be?
Yeah.
And that's where I think giving the guys, we were kind of talking about this before, right?
Right.
Giving the guys even some words going and having a translator and going, look, I believe you, Doug, I believe you. And say to her, I want to show you the support. I'm learning how. I'm trying, but I just don't know how to completely convey that yet. Will you stay with me? Will you walk? What
and
I'm
hearing
committed.
the responses that you get, which are not. Oh, honey, I get it.
I love you. Don't you know how I get?
Let's just
No,
forget
you
it
don't
and move
get it.
on.
No, you don't.
Well, and JJ, you said it a minute ago about the heart.
Yes.
There are so many of us that look at solution. We're looking at outcome.
No.
And so especially, not to be stereotypical of men, but a lot of us are that way, where we're looking as, I'm
They were
done.
trained up that
I'm
way.
out.
We
Right,
followed,
right.
They
we
were
followed
trained
all the
up that
steps.
way. Right.
And here's the completed bookcase.
Look, their
Exactly.
steps are right
And
here.
then
Yeah.
wondering why I can't say, this is how I've hurt you in a very humble, tender way, and not get a really adverse reaction.
Yeah.
And that being okay. And so it's learning not only the verbiage, but the
Yes.
process
Yes.
of being other-centered, staying with her in that every word that comes out of my mouth is one more where she begins to sink back further and further and further, hearing the devastation and the hurt and the pain that she's lived through, maybe not have had words for, right? She may not have had the
powerful.
right words to understand exactly what was going on. And now she's hearing this all at one time in a 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, long session. And it just becomes overwhelming. Talking about nervous system, right? It like overwhelms us.
Yeah.
And so then she's having this reaction, and I'm wondering, well, like you said, what's the reaction about? I'm
Right.
giving you what you wanted.
Right.
Let's move on now. When we're looking at that as the beginning,
You're right.
not as the end.
And once he learns, both couples teaching them the neuroscience of their bodies, right? That, you're not overreacting. Telling the female that you're not overreacting. Your body's trying to protect you, right?
Right, you're flooded, and
Yeah.
you're responding to
Right.
that.
She's not trying to attack you. She's
Expressing pain.
She's this plea of, can't you see
Yes.
me?
Yeah.
That's what she's trying to say. But his shame will come from the shame blockers will come up and go, what? Why do you have to pick up? So
Right.
And
You need
and
someone
of
there.
course that even
Which is
draws
what we've been trained to do.
Right.
That even draws from his history, his childhood, right? Maybe he had a really angry mother,
yes,
right? And if she was ever, he didn't get it right, he didn't do it the way she wanted, she would respond with anger. And so he's trained himself, right? Not intentionally.
His attachment has been trained, yes.
Right, to respond to that anger in a certain way. So now she gets angry. I've done
Yes.
the disclosure. She's angry because she's expressing her pain that way.
Right.
And now you're not allowed to be like that, or I'm going to fight back, or what often happens, I'm going to run away.
Yeah.
I'm going to go hide. I'm going to retreat. I'm going to isolate with work. I'm going to isolate with hobby. I'm going to isolate with TV. I'm going to isolate with my addiction, right?
Right.
And so it is so important to have a trained professional that helps you in those moments when those same patterns are flaring up.
when your body's working.
When your body's
Doing
working,
what it's supposed to do.
yes,
Right.
trying to protect you
Right.
in that moment, to be able to go, okay, let's pause for a minute
Right.
before you go to your normal reaction.
Right.
Let's look at, what are you feeling, and then what are your options? What are your choices? You could react, or you could respond. You could be self-centered, you could be self-protective, or you could be other-centered.
But if that's not translated, and I know you guys agree with this, I say it this way: it's hard not to take personal what feels so personal.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And so with the guy, you can tell that he's, in this case that we're talking about, he's showing up really trying. And so you can see when they get into these core patterns at home, how they go down the pain drain.
Yeah. So quickly.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
Very difficult.
Okay, so we talked about the key components. Let's talk about some of the common mistakes. So, we talked about the common mistake of minimizing, of blame shifting. We talked about the leaky faucet approach, where you don't share everything. You do a little bit here, a little bit more, and then you drop the big bomb. These things that are so painful.
Yes.
We talked about the mistake of demanding forgiveness right away, and the demand, okay, now that I've done this, we're never talking about it again.
Oh, that's I personally
putting it on
know.
the shelf.
That is the worst.
Yeah.
That is the worst. Something that I came up with in our life and with others is there's no expiration date.
Right.
Absolutely.
No more, and I use
Yes.
the example, no more than I would, or a couple would not talk about a child they lost.
Right.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
Don't ever, of course, I've heard that too in our office. Yeah. Don't ever bring this up again.
Yeah.
But then that really morphs into forgiveness is not forgetting.
That's right.
Right? And forgiveness is not reconciliation.
That's correct.
That's
correct.
a biggie, biggie when confused.
Right.
Yeah. So would there be other common mistakes that you add to the list, or are there things that you would say, okay, let's dig a little bit deeper into that one? Feel like that would be worth having a longer discussion on that common mistake.
I think the trigger that re-triggers is when a guy honestly says, well, first of all, I'm going to back up a second. So when a guy is ready for disclosure, we have to think, how many years has he been in his addictive process, right? And just the brain has wrapped around this incoherent narrative, right? And then so he has a willingness to show up and do it, but his body and brain aren't there yet. And then where if that's not explained, he can really, he really can relapse. He really can walk away. And I've actually had some guys who will go, forget, I'm going, no, you're
so close.
right there.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
right there. So I would think just really understanding that and having that translated, having them to understand if you just didn't arrive here. It's not like a Jack in the Box.
Yeah.
If you look back, there's a pattern. And then that one led to this one, that one. It originated somewhere, and it became part of your hard drive. And you don't cognitively think about it. You instinctively go to it because what addiction is a legitimate needs being met in an illegitimate way.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And so when a guy says, well, hey, it was nothing, don't ever say that again. Don't ever take that out of your vocabulary.
Certain phrases we never want to
ever.
repeat.
They think no. Yeah. So I think that's a biggie.
Yeah.
The Restore Intensive is designed for a woman dealing with a man's sexual addiction issues.
Restore gave me strength. I met up with a group of women that are going through things that they had no control over.
If you've been affected by betrayal, an emotional or physical affair, or pornography, the Restore Intensive will equip you with support and tools to help you through, and it's coming to a city near you. To register to find out more, call 1-800-NEW-LIFE or online at newlife.com.
You talked about this whole idea of no expiration date. I think we use the language of no statute of limitations, right?
That's good, yes.
There's always we can come back to this. And I think they both point to this idea of making sure that she has room. Actually, both of you have room to grieve.
Yes.
Right? Like I love the picture of, well, if you lost a child, you wouldn't say, well, after 3 years,
right.
we're no longer going to speak
right.
of that loss again. No, because we will go through different waves of grief for a very, very, very long time, probably
and we'll never
until we die.
That was good.
Yeah,
we're all good. Never.
Right. No. So can we talk a little bit about how do you make that space? To your point about making sure that there's this aftercare for the betrayed spouse. Like, what are some ways that the husband, boyfriend, fiance can actively create that space or actively make sure that there is care for her after the disclosure's done, or that phase of the disclosure.
Following that part. Yeah, I was thinking about that too, of what specifically being a betrayed spouse, looking back on that for you, what What did you need that you don't think you got, or what did you need that was really beneficial for you?
Well, all I can say is thank you, Jesus. I was a therapist who somewhere in there intellectually knew, going, wait, hold on. There's an anchor. And I had good therapists, right? I had good therapists. I had a really wonderful support network, which we can talk about in a second. But that, did I already give the top worst one? This is another top worst one response, as far as the guy being there with her in her pain. Because for him to sit there with her in her pain requires him to watch all the and
like regulation.
It's scary for him.
It's scary for him, right?
Yeah.
Right. And because all he can hear, if the translations inside of him is, "You're a creep. You're no good. You're
Shame.
horrible."
Yeah.
Shame is
Shame
just.
messages, yeah.
And often the visual I'll give them there, I'll go, "Look, if your child just broke their leg, and you've taken them to the ER, and they're screaming. There's been no prep yet." They're screaming and going, "Stop!" And all these contorted. You wouldn't go, "Well, how? I've been good to you. Well, I can't believe you're talking to me this way. I'm your dad."
Right.
So I try to use that as an anchor. These sounds coming out of there, are not they're directed towards him. She's wanting her to see. She's wanting him to see her, but it's not as personal as it feels on his attack of his character, right? You see why this is so difficult.
Yeah.
Well,
right?
but yes, and that's awesome. And how I characterize that is, this sounds like it's about you, but it's really about her pain.
Yes.
She wants you to hear her.
Stay with
Right, and to be
her.
present. Absolutely, to
Yes.
be present. Because when I go into, I'm a monster, I'm an idiot, I'm stupid, I'm inadequate, I've stopped listening. I've physically stopped listening, and now I'm having an internal dialogue in my head.
Because there's no condemnation in Christ, right?
Yeah.
We will never condemn ourselves across the victory line. And so many guys, I think the enemy is just crouched and waiting there to go, "You loser, no matter
Without
what
a doubt.
you do,"
Without a
right?
doubt. Yeah.
But so when guys all across the world, I'm talking to you. This is a game changer. This is a game. When he can go, words, eyes, touch.
Right.
Words, eyes, touch.
Yeah.
Babe, I'm so let's go. I'm so sorry, babe. Babe, I know.
Eye
I'm
contact,
so-
eye contact, right?
Yeah.
Words, eyes,
Right,
touch.
right,
Yes.
right.
Wet. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm here. And he's always like, "You mean that just worked?"
Right.
What?
I thought I was supposed to. Yeah.
That's all I have to, and I'm not trying.
Right.
But
It's like this story. Remember the Old Testament story where the guy goes to Elijah and he's like, I want to be healed, and you're like, why did I don't understand why he sent you to me? Like I can't heal you. And he's okay. Go dip yourself seven times.
General, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Aren't there
general,
any
yes.
rivers in Egypt that I could go to? I mean, come
Right.
on. And his servant goes, if he had given you some heavy task to get yourself healed, wouldn't you do that?
Right.
So why wouldn't you take this? Right.
Yeah.
So
Simple.
there are some
It's just-
there are some simple in terms of they're not complicated, so they're easy to understand. Not simple in terms of practice.
Experience.
Practice
Yeah.
experience.
Because it requires me to shut down or override is a better way to say it. To override that system. Right, the automatic
Fight or
system
flight,
is saying, run away or go toe to toe.
Right.
But I can override that, and just as you said,
And
I can offer
regulate.
that compassion.
Regulate.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
You got to regulate. it.
And I'll just add a sidebar to this. So, you think that we get into addictions because of ruptured attachment, right?
Right.
And so if you have a guy in this situation who's used to figuring it out all by himself, so, and it's he's tried hard, but hard trying doesn't work.
Right.
We need
Right.
wisdom and guidance.
Right.
So when you come in with this answer, come alongside him and go, "Hey," he's like, "Is there a trick to this? This seems
Right.
way."
It's a little
So
magic.
I really
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that because opening up, they're opening up to help, and that's how it should be. You're not alone.
And you have to override the lie
Yes.
that when she's saying all these terrible things, that that's clearly she doesn't want me anywhere near her. She wants me
that's
to
another third
get
worst.
as far away from her as possible.
Right.
That's why she's saying all these terrible things, right? So that I'm going to leave, right?
Well, because that's what's happened all my life.
Yes.
When I've been in relationships and they said those things, that's what they meant.
That's what
Right.
they said.
I forget what episode y'all talked about that. Was that the forgiving, maybe, where if I've messed up this many times, well, I need to exit.
Right.
But what does that do? I always say, don't make assumptions. I tell guys that. I would tell my husband that. I go, please don't.
Yes.
I go, you're having a monologue. This should be a dialogue.
Right.
Ask me. Don't make
Right.
assumptions, right? And even though it's well-meaning, it's deeply hurtful because, she could be... This is not cartoonish, but it's like she could be, having a crying, sobbing. He was there. She raises up, and he's like, well, where'd he go?
Where'd he go?
He was right because he left.
Yeah.
Because he was reading her mind.
Well, because
right?
he was reading her mind. Well, you said, I'm a dog, and just get out of here. You never want to. So I left.
Right.
And I always tell guys, fire your mind reader.
Fire your mind reader.
Yeah.
Fire your mind reader.
So
You have
do
to.
you really
Yes.
want me to leave, or am I?
Yeah.
Right.
Check that out.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
if we're using that words, what is it? Words touch.
Words, eyes, touch.
Words, eyes, touch. If
yeah.
we're using that, then it almost forces our nervous systems to stay present
Right.
in the moment.
Right.
Even though, speaking as a guy, it's scary.
It is scary.
It is horrifying.
I mean, it's horrifying for her, but it's also
Right.
scary for me.
Right.
I mean,
And so
scary for you, yeah.
going into it knowing, okay, this is going to be uncomfortable, but it's okay. No one's ever died from being uncomfortable.
That's right.
And we'll be okay
Yeah.
if I can just stay in the moment. And that's why words I touch work.
Yeah.
It's a twofer, okay? Because not only can he be attuned to her, okay, he's learning how to sit through pain.
Right.
And letting it move through his body, right? Because historically, as soon as that pain hits,
Yeah.
it's not a cognitive, but my body needs
gets stuck.
relief.
It gets
so I
stuck.
go into the addiction, right? So that's a two for both sides of that, and it's like freedom.
And it's so interesting to me because we meet a lot of guys in our private practice at the intensives who they have endured physical pain, whether that's because they are really into a particular sport, maybe they're a triathlete, something like that.
Right.
They've endured physical pain in terms of danger. Maybe they're
Right.
a police officer, they're in the military,
First
something like
responder,
that. And they can respond to that fear way easier than the fear of sitting in her pain with her.
Right.
And so but it all comes from the same place. It's not, you have to not be afraid. It's coming from, yes, you're afraid, and you do it scared.
Right. This is what lay
it's
my life.
uncomfortable, and you do it uncomfortably. Yeah.
This is what lay my life down really means, right?
Yes.
But no, until
Yes.
we're taught, we don't have a reference point.
Right.
So, the first responder sees that there's an outcome here. When I stay with it, the reward comes, right? But they have not had any reference point growing up of someone staying with them.
In
Right.
that pain.
In that emotional
part.
pain.
Yeah.
It's like, get out, or worse,
Right.
something worse, like in the 80s when we were taught in grad school. You go to your room, and when you straighten up, you can come back out.
Oh, that, yeah.
What a
Yeah.
fail.
Yeah.
What a fail.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
still,
for
only
first-
show me your best stuff.
For first responders and for those guys that you were talking about that can handle like ER folks and like hurricanes and those folks that go into that, they've learned how to compartmentalize it. So they're feeling the same stuff that we feel, only they're setting it in this nice, neat little container, this little box over here with a big bow and about 10 feet of concrete on all sides.
Yeah.
What I try to tell guys to do is we're going to, since we've compartmentalized so many things, we're going to use that to our advantage. So when I am now words, eyes, touch, when I am in front and I'm processing that and I
Right.
start to get scared, I take that fear, put it in that container, set it aside, God, self, and others. I take that now to my guys so that I can stay here.
Yes.
So it's that really ugly thing that we talked about that was horrible for us, and using it to our advantage now so that we can deal with that trauma and pain in us, the shame messages, the negative emotions, you know, the incompetence, insignificance, impotence, right? I take that, put it away so that now I can be here with her and stay with her for that longevity and then deal with this stuff.
That's the key,
later.
Right? It's not I'm putting it away and never
forgetting
dealing with
it. Right. I'm coming back to
Nor
it.
am I making the mistake of, I've got to work on my pain, and I can't show up for you. It's there's space for that. I will get to that, and I will tend to it. I'm not hiding from it. I'm not locking it up. I'm just simply putting it on the shelf for now, so that I can stay
here
present.
with you. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I can
Sitting in your
pace
pain.
this.
Yes.
I can pace it.
Yes.
I'm here. I'm not. You know, Hebrews. I'm with you. I'm not. I'm here. I will never leave you. Every time we do that, she goes, he stayed. Because when we go, you know, I called him every name in the book, and he stayed. So kind of the litmus test on the backside. Let's see, and they're not trying to put it. Well, maybe a few loops.
There's a few.
We'll be honest. Okay, a few loops. Okay, but they're loops of, can I trust you again? Right. I want to trust you. Let me see, how far will you go? How far will you do this?
Now, I know at the Every Man's Battle Intensive, we talk about full disclosure. At Restore, you talk about full disclosure.
Yes.
And we're both promoting this as one of the key elements of recovery and restoration of the relationship. It's not the only. It's not like once you get through full disclosure, now we're at full reconciliation, full restoration. But it is a necessary component to lead to restoration. I'm wondering, at Restore, is there anything else that you guys share from the perspective of full disclosure that would be important for our audience to hear?
Well, I've said it earlier, I think, is that when, you know, we encourage her not to know all the details, right? We also define what warrants disclosure. Some women have been taught that only a physical relationship warrants disclosure.
Okay.
But we say that emotional, voyeurism, porn, all of that weighs in the same for betrayal trauma, right?
Yeah.
We do, if you want a polygraph, I mean, get someone who's, you know,
got some experience with it.
Done it once or twice, has some experience. But so pretty much the same things, because I've read through your Every Man's Battle material, and we're on the same page.
Yeah.
What I personally love is if we can get a guy to commit to Every Man's Battle and get the female to go to Restore, because we need community.
Yes.
We need community, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And, you know, to that point, if a husband has gone to Every Man's Battle, then if his wife signs up for Restore, there's a discount, correct?
Absolutely. In fact, I think they both could go the first time at the same time, right? And there's a discount.
And they get a discount.
They need to call New Life, because there's always a discount there if you can't afford. We know we have scholarships.
Right.
But what I will even do, because it's so deep and so intense, wide and tall, right, is I send women back to Restore as an alum, and I send men back to Every Man's Battle as an alum.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they need to do that. Speaking of aftercare, I'll do a quick left here. They need to do the sustained victory. Do y'all call it sustained victory? Okay.
We do indeed. We do indeed.
Right.
Yes.
Because we cannot heal outside of group.
That's right.
Period.
Community.
Yeah. You have to have community.
Yes.
Laura, thank you so much for being with us today.
I feel like we just touched the very tip of it. There's so much more.
It often feels that way.
Yeah.
But we are so grateful that you did join us. And I would love it if you would come back, because our next episode, we're going to be talking about what should she do if he is not doing the good recovery work.
That's tough. Yes,
that's
I would
next
love
week's episode.
to.
So if could we convince you to stay and join us, because we think that in order for that to be a full discussion, man, we need both perspectives. We need both the male and female perspective on that. So thank you for agreeing to do that.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening today. We are so grateful that you are listening. I don't know if you know this, but we have now surpassed, I think it's 55 countries that we have people listening to the podcast, which is extraordinary to us. But we also know that there's a huge audience of people who haven't heard. Yeah. So I want to encourage you, if you know someone who maybe they're struggling, maybe they're either struggling with their own addiction, or maybe you are a wife, a girlfriend, a fiance, and you know someone who has been betrayed, would you share this episode with them? To let them know that there is hope, to let them know that there is help available, that they don't have to and really shouldn't try and walk through this on their own. So I hope that you would do that. Hope that you would share it with someone that you know. Continue to listen. As Laura mentioned as well, if you've never been to Restore, if you are the betrayed spouse and you've never had the opportunity to go to Restore, we would encourage you to call 1-800-NEW-LIFE and let them know that your partner went to Every Man's Battle and to ask for that discount for your registration.
And just going to add one thing, they could be betrayed in a former relationship, and then that's carrying into their current relationship.
Oh, that's such a good point.
So,
yeah.
Because, time passes, our
Betrayal's
hearts don't.
Betrayal, right?
Betrayal is betrayal.
Yeah.
So.
Still hurts.
Okay, we hope that you will join us next week for What Should She Do If He Is Not Doing Good Recovery Work. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. This podcast is just one of the many ways we can encourage and help you. If you're looking for more help, visit us at newlife.com or call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. Please remember to review, like, and share the podcast as it helps others find us. If you have a comment about this podcast, we'd love to hear from you. Drop us a line at embpodcast@newlife.com. See you next week.